Okay, we're back. We're live. It's Thursday. This is Global Connections, and we have a surprise visit from Russel Leu. Russel Leu is an attorney who was practicing here and then decided at some critical point in his life that he was going to practice in China. And he's been practicing in China for the better part of, 15 years now? I think.
11 years.
11 years. Well,
Over
that's
11
on the way
years,
to
Jay.
15.
I sound old, Jay.
In Beijing with Sheppard, Mulin, which is an American firm that has an office there. And he gets to see a lot. He also teaches and has made inroads into the Chinese legal education system in China. He gets to see everything. He's totally fluent in Mandarin, so he gets to see what's going on right on the street of Beijing. And I've been there, and I've been with him there, and I know this of my own personal knowledge. I can speak to it and tell you about Russel. Russel, nice to see you here.
Nice to see you, Jay. Aloha, ni hao.
Thanks for coming around. Ni hao to you too, baby. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff going on. But the first thing, you're giving a speech here not too far away. Tell us about that.
Yes, I'm doing a speech next week for the Hawaii State Bar Association. And my speech will cover dispute resolution practice in China, specifically arbitration. And it's a vehicle of how disputes are resolved between foreign and Chinese parties. So I think I'm trying to enlighten our Hawaii lawyers to get an understanding of what dispute resolution is and how it's accomplished in China. And I think it's good because I think we need to get more exposure, more global education to our lawyers. I think Hawaii lawyers are really natural at becoming global lawyers. I did it. Everybody can do it. And I'm happy to be here to share my experience.
Yeah, and we appreciate that.
And
you're our man in Beijing is what you are.
And like they say, Jay, I'm not an expert because every day China changes. China is so vast. It's so huge. There's so many people.
How do you keep track?
It's almost impossible. Every day you're just at the end of the day just really spent because keeping up with the law, keeping up with what people are doing, clients. It's a big vacuum that it churns itself out every day.
So you come from Hawaii, which is like a country town compared to Beijing, and I just wonder. And you say it's hard to keep up with the changes in China. I wonder how it is for the Chinese, who were born, raised, and schooled there, and totally native. Do they have trouble keeping up with it too?
Well, I think the Chinese are here to train, to be very focused, and they understand the importance of getting a good education, especially these days, a global education. And there's a trend where more and more Chinese students at the undergraduate level are going to attending school in the United States. We've got great schools here at University of Hawaii, but we also got like Hawaii Pacific University, which attracts a lot of international students. And I can see someday they've got a beautiful new facilities at the pier. I can see
in this building.
In this building.
They're putting the business school in our old space
Right.
here in the lower level of Pioneer, and they're building out another floor. They're going to put a lot of stuff in here.
And I think as a community, we should be supportive of these efforts, of everyone who tries to do that, because it brings a lot of exposure. Kids who come from China, especially kids that may have affluent parents, will come here, kids will stay at school here, will love the place. They're going to make a community later. They will want to buy into this community. They want to invest in this community. So all of these are real positive. So these are things that we should applaud and try to nurture.
What troubles me, and we really have to discuss this because we always discuss it, is that you are a great advocate for doing business with China, going over there, investing in China, making deals with the Chinese. The fact is that over the past 11 years at least, because you knew stuff about China before you went also, and I began thinking about China in the early 2000s. I can tell you the day I began thinking about China, but we don't go as much as they come. Every lawyer there gets a master's degree in some American or English school. They familiarize themselves with American law. There are a number of law firms in China that have offices in the United States and in Europe. They do the outreach. They learn. They practice. They they penetrate other societies, and all for the benefit of their organizations and for China. We don't do that, not at that level. And we have to learn, this is your song I'm singing here. We have to learn to do that. We have to realize that it can't be a one-way street, because if it's a one-way street, we lose out. We have to look at what they do and do. We have to emulate them.
Mm-hmm.
We have to go to China, and start businesses, not at the, stock market, public company level, but at the law firm level and at the mom and pop level and ordinary businesses in Hawaii level. We don't do that. We don't send our people over there. We don't get familiar. We don't learn Mandarin. We don't know the territory, and we are suffering for it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
And I think, Jay, there's a lot of truth in that, because as you know, that besides practicing law, I involved. I'm a law professor, associate dean in a law school in a major university in China, in Beijing, and I'm seeing more and more of students graduating from the law school. We offer common law courses, and I'm getting people like Judge Fidell, who graciously comes over, and he's going to start an advocacy institute. Hopefully at our law school we'll work together. But what I'm seeing is the children then graduate and will go to U.S. law schools. They used to be an LLM, but these days they're going for a JD. They're getting licensed in New York.
Well,
they're
define
American lawyers.
that for our audience. An LLM will be a master's in law.
Which is a one-year program.
One-year program, so it's kind of equivalent to a master's in other areas, but an LLD is a doctorate of laws.
Yeah.
It's the most serious degree
Right.
you can get in law.
And then the Juris Doctorate is a 3-year. It's what every American
The JSD,
lawyer,
then the LLM, then the LLD.
and the JD now, the JD, Juris Doctorate.
Yeah.
And they're becoming real lawyers,
Yeah.
real American lawyers. That's going to change the legal services market, especially for international transactions, because they speak Mandarin, English. They write English too. And they're up to the curve much more than our American lawyers are. So again, these
They
are
know
ones.
both systems.
They know both, and
That's
both
the
cultures.
thing, we're behind the curve. We don't know both systems, except a guy like you, but you're in the minority. Lots of Chinese lawyers who come here and go to law school here know both systems, and we gotta respond. We gotta emulate them. Anyway, but I want to get to another thing with you, okay? China, has been the subject of so much discussion through this period of the boom, if you will, the capitalist boom. But there have been issues that, have been raised, discussed ad infinitum, and not solved. For example, rule of law. For example, corruption. For example, human rights. I guess that's about it. And we talk about that. They talk about that. But we just talk about it. It doesn't really get fixed. And Xi Jinping now, it sounds to me like he's on the, he's not carrying the torch the way Hu Jintao was. He's more reactionary and doing aggressive things internationally, diplomatically, and inside the country. And so that's not a good sign as far as I can see. We'd rather have the kind of progress that we want in the United States. Comment?
Well, I think it's a very complex question, and it's a complex set of facts that we're dealing with. I think first of all, I think we fail to realize it's still a third world country. You may see the wealth, you may see the big cities and the bright lights, Shanghai, Beijing. You may see smart students come out here, but the reality is that most of China, the population is still in poverty. Not poverty, but it's outside of the big cities, and they're not enjoying the same benefits, the same economic benefits. And I think the question of human rights is, you have to ask yourself the question. The definition can be seen two different ways by two different people. In the US, we can have 2 cars, a house, maybe 2 houses. We have a big screen TV, we have football games on the weekend. We are so comfortable, okay? And in China, when you don't have that, you're not worrying about human rights, you're worrying about education, medicine. just to the basic needs, and then getting that education. And China's problem is that there's so many people, if the economy is not buzzing right, the college graduates, what are they going to do for a living? What are the jobs? So we talk about human rights, and I'll get to that in a second, about human rights, about lawyers, briefly. But I think we have to understand that it's through whose eyes do we look through? Do we look through our own standards? If we're basing it on our own standards, we're going to say human rights violations, human rights and this. But if you look at 30, 40 years ago, and you talk about human rights, that's a different question. And I think that the growth of middle class, and the more people that can be middle class, I think you are at the right timing to bring that issue up. I think it's hard at this point because you don't have a really solid middle class. I mean, it's getting there, but all the wealth is in the major cities.
I agree, it's a priorities question.
Yes.
And, we shouldn't be foisting our priorities on them and all that. But, if they're investing and we're hand-holding on so many things, which we'll talk about, then, they got to respect the global priorities, the moral global priorities, and having prison camps and putting people through torture as a system is really, what they're doing to the Falun Gong is really not acceptable. And any dissident, what they do to dissidents is not acceptable. Furthermore, and I forgot to mention this, is environment. It's not only for the moral view of the world, it's for it's for the sake of the government and the relationship of the government and the people that they take care of the environment. Query, are they doing that, or are the rivers still running red?
I'm not an expert in the environmental side, but I can tell you Beijing was this summer what I would expect complete pollution. It was clear blue days, basically 95% of the summer.
It was clear.
It's clear, and so something's being done. Something's being done, And so I think that to the benefit, the streets are very clean. You don't see trash all over. You don't have a homeless problem in the city. So there are different challenges.
Well, hold that thought.
And you got to hold that thought. And you got to realize in the last 20, 30 years, all this has happened because of whatever is going on in China. So
well, it
I
runs
think
in parallel to the thing about, I don't know if you were here last Sunday, 60 Minutes, they played for the second time a segment about formaldehyde in flooring material manufactured in China. And the American company or companies that are buying this high formaldehyde flooring, which is carcinogenic and very dangerous to families who live in a house with that.
Sure.
They know, the American companies must know too. But
So let
one
me ask
point
you-
is the Chinese company that are manufacturing this, they know about formaldehyde and they continue to manufacture it. This is like the chemical in the milk. We have got to find a way to stop them doing that if they are to have a global reputation for quality in their products. It only takes one bad actor and all of China loses credibility.
Well, let me just backtrack. I think we can talk from a 30,000-foot viewpoint, and we can read what the press says here. I don't necessarily agree with what the press says here. It's always slanted. You don't know what goes on. The chemical tainting in the milk, China was swift to execute and to clamp down.
We had a speech by a guy from was it the Wall Street Journal? I forget his name right now. Very good speaker. Right after that happened, and what he said, he was following the story, writing the story while he was in China before he came back, and what he said was that that Beijing knew about that. What's the name of that chemical?
I don't know the name of the chemical, but I know it was an additive that added into.
Yeah.
And
they knew in Beijing it had, there was a whistleblower, and they knew that it exists, but it was the year of the Olympics. Melamine is the
that's
chemical.
correct.
They knew about the whole scandal, but they decided because it was, the Olympics that year, they didn't want to dampen the Olympics, so they dampened the story until right after the Olympics were over. In the meantime, arguably, a lot of children were drinking the melamine milk in that period. So there's a real big moral question.
I think the Chinese consumer public has caused a lot of big uproars and all these kind of health and safety issues. And, I think they're on the right track. And I think that the corruption that Xi Jinping is rooting out, whether you agree or disagree with his program as to his motives for doing it, it has sent messages in all sectors of the world, of the community and the industries. For example, just a few weeks ago, the most influential, the most important leading judicial figure was the number 2 person in charge of the Supreme Court justice in China. And he was picked up for corruption. He was in an investigation. And he's going to get the slammers. So, corruption is a big issue, and I think that the government is very serious about it. And I think it is, China is so big that, it will send a message. But these are things that are ongoing. And I don't think you'll see a lot of news play here, but in China there's a big news play. It's free, the people have access to knowing that. And I think that's important, okay? So people understand that, corruption cannot be the order of the day.
No, but breaks are the order of the day. We're going to take a break.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Russell. We're going to take a very short break. That's Russel Leu. He's a lawyer from Hawaii, practicing for 11 years. We got that, 11 years in Beijing with a firm now called Sheppard Mulin. And we're talking about, is China closing its doors? It's a rhetorical question here on Asia, and we'll call it Global Connection. We'll be right back after this short break, and we'll talk with Russell some more, and we'll talk about the stock market in China and what that all means to our stock market, which went down 500, make that 400, and make that 300 and some odd points today. It's a lot. Bye. We'll be right.
Aloha, my name is PJ, and I'm the host of Hawaii Sports Update. I am very interested in local sports, and that's why I host the Hawaii Sports Update show. I bring in guests from Hawaii, I bring in guests from UH, I bring in guests from the community, I bring in big names, I bring in small names, I bring in all names that are community related and doing positive things, sports related in the community. Come join me every Tuesday at 1 p.m. here on Hawaii Sports Update. You can also join me on my golf tournament, the first annual PJ Sports Radio Show golf tournament. It's going to be held at Coral Creek. For any information, go to ThinkTech, Hawaii, INC, and friend us. The PayPal and a summary of the event will be right there available for you. And don't forget to tweet us.
Oh, we're back. We're live. We're here, Russell and me. And we wanted to sort of get the gestalt now of what was going on in the macro markets in China. So first of all, the government in Beijing was trying to prop up the stock market, and in an ordinary market setting, you can't do that very long before it bites you, and it apparently is biting them, and it has, because the world is all interdependent now. The American market is suffering. And I can't say whether it's a direct result, but there are people who do make it a direct result. And today, the market went down for over 300 points. It's not good. And so, the other thing that Xi Jinping has done is he's devalued the currency to get an advantage in trade, I guess, and also to prop up the economy. So is this a good thing? Is this good for China? Is this good for the U.S.? Is this good for the world? Or is this maybe not so good?
Well, Jay, I think that all of these things will have an effect. Whatever China does, it's going to have an effect, good or bad. And it sounds like that by devaluing the yen, it creates problems outside of China, especially to our U.S. markets. And again, the question is this a one-time fix, or is this something that the China government will do in the future, continue to do this practice? And nobody knows except Xi Jinping.
Well, it's a Politburo. I mean, I'm sure he takes his instructions from them.
And this is part of politics, as I would think it is. Xi Jinping is coming to the United States on a state visit, and which means that...
When is that?
That, I think, is this fall. I don't know exact dates, but he is scheduled to meet with President Barack Obama. So this is a very important visit for him. And so again, this is maybe a political ploy And, who knows certain except for Xi Jinping. But I think it drives a point, Jay, that you raise in the show all the time, that now today's world, we're globally interdependent upon each other. And especially coming back to Hawaii, where I'm from, I think we as a community need to interact. We need to know more. Gone are the days where we had federal money, military spending. All that is gone. Where are you going to get a source of money that's going to come here to invest into it? And we had the Japan boom in the 80s and 90s, but shockingly, Japan, I was there 2 months ago. It was $1 for 84 yen. Today, I was on a trip coming back a few days ago, and the Japanese fellow told me is that there's no hope. It's one US dollar is 120 something for the Japanese yen, and their economy is tanking. They've got problems. So we're all interdependent upon each other. So whatever we do here, we've got to be global.
We tank.
They tank, we tank. Again, we rely on tourism, but maybe we look beyond that. And I still think one of the greatest assets here the community can invest in is to be an educational center, become global education. Many Chinese students are leaving China to come abroad for an education in U.S. colleges.
It's an industry.
It's a real industry. And I think we need to, as a community, work together as solutions and take a little risk. Coming from here, I see little risk is never taken, and maybe risk is taken, but we don't know how to evaluate that risk because we're not familiar with what's out beyond the shores of the islands.
Yeah.
And I really think we have to change.
We have to think internationally.
We have to think globally. I use the word globally. We need to, it's a priority of the day. It's very important because as resources get shrinking in this community, the kids are not going to return. There's not going to be money invested in this community, and we're going to be an aging community like Japan. We have big problems.
The bell curve, the wrong direction on the bell curve.
The wrong
of
direction.
Aging demographic. But one thing that is implicit in that is the notion, and maybe to some extent it's factual, is that the Chinese are moving assets out of China. Maybe they're worried about the China economy, the China stock market, the devaluation, and to some extent, not to a large extent, relatively speaking, but to some extent they're investing in Hawaii property. I'm not sure about businesses, but Hawaii properties. And at first, we heard stories of this and sort of wrote it off as aspiration, not truth. But now I think the stories have increased, and I think there really are some transactions going on where Chinese investors moving money out of China are buying real estate here. Now, one of the problems, and I put this to you as a local boy, one of the problems is that there are these real expensive condos that are going up. There's one building in Kaka'ako that wants $100 million for a penthouse. Okay, and the reason I think it's priced that way is because they think there's a Chinese investor out there who has the bucks to pay for it, and they'll get a lot of Chinese money to buy these units. The problem is if they buy these units with all that kind of big money, the developer will make a lot of money, and I suppose the city will make greater real property tax revenues, but in terms of its effect, the effect of that kind of market on the local community has got to be detrimental. We need affordable housing. We need local owners. We don't need $100 million condos. I'm sorry. It's not helping anybody locally to do that. And yet that's what we're doing. And I think a lot of people are saying, bring on the Chinese, have them buy all these units. We know it'll be empty, but we want the money from the transaction. What do you think?
Well, I think that's a problem that we're going to see more and more. I think that the problem goes back to we create the market. We're the seller. We're going to set the price. So it reminds me of the heydays of the Japanese investment into Hawaii, where people, I think, got a little bit zealous and saw the bucks coming in. Again, the people put outrageous prices then and now into these units. And we're seeing more investors not only from China, but Japan, people of money who see the economy tanking there. We have Koreans. We have the Korean developer, I think, is the one by Alamoana. that's developing some there. So we're seeing from Asia a lot of wealth, but we're creating the market. So again, it's a delicate balance. Again, I'm not the mayor or the governor. I think that these are things that has to be done locally to solve these kind of problems, knowing that these problems will happen. And it's a balance because the government wants money. We need taxes. We need to pay for these things. But again, my question is: are we doing things the right way? Are we looking for new industries to come to bring Hawaii that are not necessarily going to be people who just buy $1 million condo? I'm saying looking for creating industries, for example, educational tourism. We got great things in the mindset and knowledge for how to handle kids, children education. You've got the Hawaii Discovery Center out there, which does a great job of getting kids in there, and they have something
Surrounded by
with China.
homeless.
They have surrounded homeless, and you got to do something about that. And as I see it, these kind of things in the education community as a broad spectrum. It's a really education industry. There's a need for Chinese students that want to come here. They're going to pay full price for it, and it brings people who are long-term and say, well, I don't mind investing in the community. I'd like to live here. I want to put some money into this. So that we're looking at a different kind of investor again, investor that would fit in the community and will understand the local values. But again, the problem that we have is that I think, as being a local boy here, is that I was fortunate, I'm humbled to have the opportunity to go to China.
It's a great opportunity.
And to spend 11 years out there. It has given me a different set of eyes. And but the problem is I come back here, nobody wants to listen. I'm an outsider again. I'm not local. You don't think the same way. But again, and I'm not saying I'm an expert. I'm saying what I'm seeing, and because China changes very quickly. But it's an opportunity to seize, because there are so many children that now in China that in the high school level are leaving China to go to schools in the U.S. to get an education, and with the goal of going to a U.S. college, because China, their big government policy is innovation. The next 20, 50 years. Meaning they want to take the state-owned enterprises, they're large companies, and they want to be regular bona fide multinational companies. They want to become the Coca-Colas. That's the inevitable path. And the inevitable path means that they're going to need human resources. They're going to need managers. They're going to need people who understand the Western culture. They're going to need people who understand that there are rules that you have to follow. And the culture will change. So again, this is the value that Hawaii brings. It's a nice place, but we need to shore it up to show and get the credentials that we're an educational community for young children. That's the niche that I see being sort of
But what you're really saying is education is a business, and we should, try to shape our systems, whatever they are, to be industries and to make it and sustainable
Attractive.
industries and make
Sustainable.
it attractive to the Chinese so that we can bring them here. And I certainly agree with that.
I mean, I'll tell you something. We've got great schools here. Iolani has a new innovation center, which is fantastic. I've
It
seen
is the Sullivan Center.
Sullivan Center, and kudos to their school. Pono has the Wool Center, great synergy, and I like MidPAC. They have a great creative art, drama arts, and all of these. Imagine if you got the three schools headmasters together, and let's work a plan with the industry, the education, and the public school system. You got Waianae, the movie center, right? You've got these things and help each other as an industry. How can we coordinate and work with the governor and the mayor? And bring in the symphony, all of these things to create a different platform. We've always stayed with the same platform, the hula girl and the ukulele. And the ukulele, let me tell you that. Everywhere.
That's because tourism drives our, international or global look at things, which it shouldn't.
But globalism is going to drive everybody. You're going to have to understand that. But the biggest thing in China right now, all the local music stores ever in China sell ukuleles. And they don't even know where that comes from. They sell it even at the subway stations. And I'll tell you, here's a message for Jake, the Pied Piper, to the music and the ukulele, and bring these kids here and parents and create a total industry of education and kids growing up. I think it's a wonderful thing, but it takes a concerted effort by everyone, a teamwork.
Well, it takes a change in the way we think about things.
It's a change in the way we think, and I say, dare to think.
Here, then we have a whole generation coming
But
up.
you-
And I want to talk, I really like these conversations because you come on a, connect the dots basis. And we see each other every 6 months maybe, and we have these conversations. And, you're the same, but you're different, Russell. Your ideas have expanded, your worldview has expanded, your suggestions to Hawaii have expanded, and we should always do this. We should also talk about how Hawaii can get on the global bandwagon. But first, a break. As Russel Leu, Sheppard Mulin in Beijing, been there 11 years, although it seems like more. And we're here on Global Connections talking about is China closing its doors? And I suppose, how can we keep them open?
That's right, that's
We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Ethan Allen. I'm the host of Likeable Science on ThinkTech Hawaii. We talk about why people should like science, why science is actually fun, how science is a dynamic and vital part of everyone's life, why everyone, every man, woman, and child on the planet should really know science, should love science, should be familiar with science. So it's a great show. People come on here and have interesting conversations with us. They tell us why they do what they do, why they love it, why we should love it too. I hope you'll join us every Friday, 1 to 2 p.m. And of course, you can see it anytime on YouTube. Aloha.
Aloha, my name is Josh Green. I'm a senator from the Big Island and ER physician. Every other Tuesday, I get to host a show here on the ThinkTech program about healthcare. We call it Healthcare in Hawaii. It's really enjoyable for me to bring other healthcare leaders from around the state to talk about our pressing issues. Hawaii has long been the health state, but we need to keep up the momentum, the inertia, and with your help and with your participation, we can come and share all of the big issues that are pressing day to day. Thanks for joining us every Tuesday, alternating weeks from 2 to 2:45.
Great place to be. Oh, we're live. Okay. Why don't we continue our discussion,
It's a
Russell?
great discussion.
That's Russel Leu, Sheppard Mulin in Beijing, and he comes and we refresh ourselves every now and then by getting his perspective as it evolves about the relationship of China and Hawaii. So, I mean, what I'm getting, which I got from you before many times, is that Hawaii has to prepare itself. It has to raise its sights. It has to change the signs at the airport. It has
You
to
just hit a
bring
nerve on me.
What's
The
that?
signage. I come and go to and from, I still see signage or tapes or language speakers, Japanese and Korean, but the Chinese are a big, major tourist market. They're coming here. Where are the language speaking things, okay? And it's important because I hear in Chinese when I leave, the first and last place that leaves the greatest impression on our visitors is the airport. I come in and you have to take a long walk, or I had to wait for the Wiki bus. I waited 10 minutes, and part of this flight had to wait downstairs before we get shuttled to the immigration customs. But these are things that are important. Okay, no language, and then when you leave, you hear other languages but Chinese. So the Chinese are saying, "Well, we're not welcome here," So again, these are things that play an important role. And I'm not sure, there's a mystery why we haven't gotten it. I fly to Detroit, I fly to all these other cities, and I hear Chinese tapes. I hear the Chinese tapes in the language. Even in Tokyo Airport, in Haneda, as well as the other big one I go through all the time, there are tapes in Chinese.
Well, on
and
the
there's
way to
Chinese people.
becoming the biggest economy in the
global.
world.
And I got off of Haneda Airport. I had to catch a bus to the Kichijoji district. I'm on this bus. They have Japanese, English, and Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, running on the tapes, telling the visitors. Even in Japan, they've got it right. So where are we? If we are truly the premier tourist destination, we need to focus on some of these details that are very important.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have to make a system for that, and you've been saying that the government should step in and do it, and I could not disagree. The government should step in and do it. Directly or through the multitude of tourism agencies that we have established here. I don't think. Do you see any advertising in China for Hawaii as a destination?
I've only seen it once on the subway. There was something, or twice, excuse me. There was something about Hawaii on the. There's LED screens in the subway cars. Actually, and I saw that. I said, yeah, that's great. And then I saw it on a flight, a Chinese flight, a domestic flight. I saw a whole thing about Hawaii. But again, it goes to this that I have to be really important to say, is that we market ourselves one way. Culture, hula girls, the conch shell, the emu, this is Hawaii, beautiful. But when they come here, it's not what they see. And that is, to my,
It's a bit of a deception.
it's a deception. And the Chinese have one thing that I say about the culture. When they've been deceived, they will cut you off. That's it. There's
But
not
don't you think, I don't know what he's going to do, but Larry Ellison is, involved in a big rebuilding of both hotels in.
For the wealthy, Four Seasons Hotel, right? It's to be for the wealthy
It'll be for
traveler.
the wealthy.
Yes.
Probably for the wealthy Chinese.
Yes, it's probably wealthy
I mean,
Chinese.
it's going to be expensive, I think. And so, isn't that the way to handle it? I mean, we build hotels, we build condos for them, and they come and spend money.
Well, here's my observation. The tourism industry itself, I think there's a high occupancy rate, so people are saying, why change it? The hotel rooms are more 70s, 80s, a lot designed for the Japanese traveler, small. The Chinese hotels in China, the nice hotels, are huge, luxurious, modern, Wi-Fi all over. The Chinese are just technological people. They're carrying their smartphones, they want to search the web, they want to do this, they want to do that.
Right.
They can read English. The reason why is the Chinese education system 30 years ago forced them to all start English, and it's a core course, so they can read English. So they're not telling you, but they can read English. They know what's going on. And so we're not technology driven in some of these places. I don't see that. The hotel rooms are old, okay? There's no good Chinese restaurant here. I can tell you that the food is the most important thing. That is important. I'm sure it was for the Japanese initial travelers that came here in the 80s. But there are no good Chinese restaurants.
So why doesn't some young entrepreneur, make him a millennial, with some chutzpah? He contacts a Chinese restaurateur. He says, I'll help you. We'll make a restaurant together. It'll be big, it'll be really good, it'll be category killer. And it will not only affect, not only bring in the Chinese from China, but everybody locally, they'll want to use it too. Why don't the Chinese invest? Why don't local entrepreneurs bring the Chinese? What's holding it back?
That's a good question, Jay. And I had a frank talk with somebody who is an executive with I can't name the name, of very, very large Chinese conglomerate that has a hospitality section. I talked with the general manager, who's actually the CEO for that direction, international market. And he said, Russell, you don't understand. Hawaii, they'd love to do it, but they're not welcome, and there's no infrastructure. There are no hotels for them, okay?
We're not big enough, we're not capitalized enough for them.
Well, look at Maldives, a small island that attracts so many Chinese that the 4 national carriers are trying to fly every day, flights there, and they just opened a Chinese embassy there. Maldives, an island, ocean, that's their number one tourism.
It's going to get burned up, it's burned out.
So what I'm saying is, we can't say today that we are Hawaii and you're going to come because we're Hawaii. Sorry about that. That's not mine.
Not mine. Every show, we got somebody's phone going off. Well, so what do you say? We have a couple of minutes left here, and I'd like to get you to talk to our millennials, because they are our hope. What do you say to them? Take camera 2, and give them your advice. Here you are, you're a lawyer, you give advice all day, you're from Beijing, where it is happening, and you want to get them involved in risky business, in entrepreneurial activities that involve China, where they can overlook, the problems that you talked about, infrastructure here, and the fact that we're not friendly to the Chinese, and where they can also overlook the fact that the Chinese seems to me, hard to deal with. It's risky to deal with them, and they're not particularly friendly on the diplomatic level, and on all the problems that Xi Jinping. So what do you say to the kids?
First of all, what we're saying is, what you read in the press is, remember, that's government-to-government issues. We can't solve the day between the relationships. And it's always going to be there because they're our competitors. Remember that. It's like a basketball game. Iolani Punho, okay? It's sort of a love-hate thing, right? You know, you're always
heard it
gonna be
here on
there.
ThinkTech.
You're always gonna be there, right? Each other, but second of all, the people are different than the government. You gotta realize that. Don't judge people like that. I read 5 or 6 newspapers a day to read on the same story to get a better read. Because the press tells you one thing. And I'll tell you some of the biggest concern that I have is the press has led everybody down this path of negative to China. So we're all negative. And so it doesn't makes us want to do something. And so we don't want to travel, we want to go there, da da da. But you know, the reality is that I'm more worried about our American kids because they're not getting a global education. They're not thinking the way it is. You got to remember one thing. Gone are the days in Hawaii where we had federal money, federal spending. Gone are the days of the military. Gone are the days of, I guess the tourism is so, market so competitive because of the internet. So we're gonna have to create and adapt ourselves to the global world. We're gonna have to think global, not just say it, you know? We are so comfortable in the US, everything is there. But as I see it, is that, you know, the world has changed, and if you don't change with it, you're gonna lose the business.
So what should they do? They're right out there at camera number 2.
I would say what Barack Obama said, learn a foreign language. Take the initiative. You learn a foreign language, your eyes will open up to the whole world. Being able to speak Chinese and understand it is like, wow, my dimensions just opened up into something that was closed to me. A lot of the communication with people like the Chinese, if you can speak some Chinese, Jay, they open up to you. It's a sense of trust, okay? Number 2, understand that the way the relationship, if we stay here, they stay there, we will never get the benefit of each other. You know, if I had a kid, my days when I went to UH, Jay, my friend, his name was Lance, we'd sit outside and look at who registered and said, hey, there's too many Chinese in this business class. So we said, a curve's gonna be really mean, so let's ditch it. So we'd go into class with all locals. Today, I'll tell my kid, get into class where the foreign kids, especially Chinese kids, learn how to think. Learn how they're very disciplined, they're very focused. And that's what we need. We need to get on track to become focused and detailed.
I hear you saying our kids should go over there. Find a way to get over there.
Find a way.
Don't stop. Make sure you get over there.
Find a way. And I really think that, I hope that there are more things in the community, you know, if it's not government related here, but community, find businesses that go to China, see how we can help and learn each other. I mean, what you need to do is you need to build this base here. You need to build that field, just like in that movie, you know, build that baseball field. We need to build that baseball field that's gonna attract that here. And the biggest thing coming from Hawaii, after being in China 11 years, is that we have this great community that looks after kids. We grew up as good kids, good society. That's common with the Chinese, that resonates with their culture. You know, everything is for the children, one-child policy. So we need to take advantage of that. Educational industry for the young kids. Schooling.
It costs money to do that, though.
Well, I think if we create programs, and I think if the different schools communicate with each other, we can start small. I mean, start small, but create a college industry. Because aside from the tourism, the hula girls, the big thing I think in China are kids. They'll do everything for their kids. You know, we should support our schools and efforts like HPU that's coming out with they're on the waterfront here, they want to get more international, support these things. Support the Punahos, support the Ilatis. How can we give you guys things, you know, relationships? And it's good to go outside of here, go to China, as you will find yourself developing relationships and dealing with people who come from a different background.
Those relationships turn into business.
And business.
And then that's good for the state, good for you, good for the state.
That's right.
Well, Russell, I'm sorry we're out of time, but I really do enjoy these conversations. Have a good time at your speech about international arbitration in China. It's a worthy discussion for sure, and I hope to see you here again soon.
And thank you, Jay, very much for the show, and it's been wonderful seeing it. And congratulations on the new studio.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
谢谢，再见。
再见。